Have you always dreamed of turning the entire screen into a bloody mess? Quite a strange question, to be honest. But if so, I have a great build just for you. It is extremely defensive and so satisfying to play. Without further ado, let's get to the build. The main idea behind this build was to create a powerful, unkillable character that fits the theme of 0.2 update, which introduced new bleed mechanics and skills. But there's one problem that not everyone can see. The way we scale bleed damage isn't as straightforward as you'd expect. First of all, in order to apply bleed on the enemy, you need to have a chance to inflict bleed in passive skill tree, or by using corresponding support gem. Now let's break down how bleed damage actually works. Bleeding is the ailment that deals physical damage over time and lasts for 5 seconds. This damage will bypass energy shield. Physical damage from hits will contribute to bleeding magnitude. Basically, the more damage you can inflict with initial hit, the more magnitude of bleeding you will get. The base magnitude of bleeding is physical damage per second, equal to 15% of the pre-mitigation physical damage of the hit that inflicted it. We will get back to the pre-mitigation part a little later, but for now we understand that base bleeding magnitude is 15% of your physical damage dealt. Basically, what I'm trying to say here is that scaling your physical damage with initial hit is as effective. No, it's even more effective than scaling your magnitude of bleeding with passive skill tree. Let me explain. While you're fighting monsters, you're not just hitting them once and wait till they bleed out to death, right? You're dealing your DPS damage on top of the bleeding effect you have inflicted. That's why such support gems as deep cuts are not as effective as you would expect. They will cut down all your damage by 25% and increase those tiny 15% part that is actually your bleeding damage over time. So it's much more effective to use something like Heft that will increase your bleeding damage on top of the actual DPS. That's why I don't have as much bleeding nodes in my passive tree. But we will get back to that topic later in this video. Now let's talk about skill gems. Our main skill is basic mace strike. We're using Cultist Great Hammer for that juicy splash damage. For me personally, the whole point of playing warrior is all about that AoE damage. So we will push this aspect to the limit. We're using magnified effect to get 30% more area of effect. Also, we're using new support called Reach to increase our area of effect even more. We actually don't care about accuracy rating because we're using Resolute technique. The next support gem is Martial Tempo. We're actually forced to use this one because we're taking such nodes as Crush and Verdict. They provide us with huge amounts of damage, but requires to compensate the loss of attack speed. Finally, Lacerate. This gem will increase our base chance to inflict bleeding, so it's absolutely necessary for this build. This is how our main skill will look like for clearing maps. But what about bosses? To deal with bosses, we will switch our AoE gems to Heft and Brutality, increasing our DPS by an additional 50%. With this build, you can deal with any bosses pretty easily, but it will take some time. As a result, you have to play through all boss mechanics, and with the tankiness we have, it's not bothering me at all. I'm really having fun playing through the game as intended, picking up the right strategy for each boss and dealing with its mechanics. The next skill we use is of course new Herald of Blood. This is actually a very interesting skill. Much more interesting than you would think. So any enemy that suffered blood loss will trigger the explosion, dealing physical damage to the targets nearby. Herald of Blood actually got several types of interactions with nearby monsters, the first of which is base physical damage. This damage will be dealt even if the target's blood loss will be only 1 HP. The second phase is 15% of unscalable physical damage dealt based on total blood loss. That is actually very cool, but we're not there yet. The third phase, aggravating bleeding on your enemies. Basically, bleeding that has been aggravated always treats the targets as moving, which causes it to deal 100% more damage. The last and most important thing is chain reaction. Yes, I know that developers trying to avoid herald interactions, but here's the thing. This skill deals physical damage to the target. All your physical damage has a chance to inflict bleeding, and this skill is not exception. So theoretically, if your Herald of Blood will have enough physical damage and high enough chance to inflict bleeding, it can potentially trigger chain reaction, especially given the fact that most of the bleeding it inflicts is aggravated. But to make it work like that, you have to put a lot of effort, boosting its damage, bleed chance, magnitude, and duration. The next skill we use is Blasphemy. This skill will allow us to inflict curses on the enemies around. I decided to use Vulnerability as a socketed curse. It's not the most efficient curse you can use for a bleed build, but it's red and fits the theme perfectly. Why it's not the most efficient curse? That's a good question. To answer it, we have to get back to the mechanics of our bleed skills, especially pre-mitigation part. So basically what that means is that all of our bleed damage, by default, will bypass enemy's armor. So breaking the armor will not affect your actual bleed damage, but it will increase physical damage with your attacks, which are affected by enemy's armor. What other curses can we use? Basically, we have two options here. We can use Enfeeble to reduce all incoming damage, or Temporal Chains to inflict slow on our enemies. To support these skills, we use Heightened Curse to increase its magnitude and Ritualistic Curse to increase its area of effect. The next skill is Berserk. It will increase our rage effect by over 40%. The rage itself is massive boost to all of our damage. We got up to 44 stacks of rage available for us, and with Berserk, we're looking at 60% more overall damage boost to our character. It's just insane. But there's one downside. Berserk will force us to lose life per each stack of rage we got, so we're losing up to 4.4% of our life per second. How can we deal with that issue? There are two ways we can go, and I decided to go both of them at the same time. The first way we can deal with it is life regeneration. I've decided to pick leather bindings to grant us an additional 5% of life regeneration. But it's definitely not enough, so I decided to add the second layer of protection, Life Leech. There are nodes like Voracious and Goring that can make Life Leech extremely viable layer of protection. Next, we got Bloodhound's Mark. This is more like a quality of life skill. It will provide you with extra stun build-up on rare and unique monsters equal to 300% of the bleeding damage they receive. But the most important stuff over here are support gems. We're using Single Out to fully break enemy's armor and this way increase overall DPS. Next, we have Life Thief that will provide us with extra 8% of Life Leech, which will greatly improve your sustainability. Basically, you don't have to use Life Flask while tanking most of the attacks. You're just leeching enough life to sustain this kind of situations. Finally, we got Main that will apply slow on your marked target, making it even easier to sustain. Next, we have Bone Shatter. This skill is still in my panel from the campaign. It's here just for those situations where you really need the whole screen to disappear very quickly. As for support gems, we're using Impact Shockwave and Execute. Also, we got Infernal Cry with Premeditation and Enraged Warcry to empower our skills. And of course, Hammer of the Gods with Heavy Swing, Rage Forged, and Fist of War to maximize its damage output. Now let's talk about gear. We're using Cultist Great Hammer with highest possible physical damage, ideally with +2 skills, attack speed, and life leech. Shield with highest possible chance to block, additional physical damage reduction, life, and resistances. As for armor, we're using Ornate Blade for that 2.5% life regeneration. The belt we're using is Infernal Clasp. It's mandatory on my opinion. Plus 5 to maximum fire resistance will boost all of our resistances due to the unique ascendancy node. In gloves, we're looking for high flat fist damage, plus 2 skills, strength, attack speed, life leech, resistances, ideally with high amount of armor. Boots with some movement speed, strength and resistances. Helmet with same stats, life, strength, res. This build will require a lot of strength in order to equip top tier weapon, so keep that thing in mind. As for the rings, we're looking for flat physical damage, flat life, strength, res. It will be ideal to have life leech on both of them. The amulet we're using mostly to cover our attributes. And very important, 50 spirit. You will need it to run Blasphemy together with Herald of Blood and Berserk. Now let's talk about passive skill tree. And we will start with defenses. The first, and probably the most crucial node in this ascendancy, is called Stalker. Modifiers to fire resistance also grant cold and lightning resistance at 50% of their value. Basically what that means is that we can stack fire resistance on our gear and it will close all the problems with other elemental resistances. Next, we have Forged Flame. Modifiers to maximum fire resistance also grant maximum cold and lightning resistance. This node is absolutely crazy. We got a lot of sources to upgrade our maximum fire resistance, and upgrading it will grant us all elemental resistances. It's just crazy. And also we got this node, which gives us plus 5 to maximum fire resistance absolutely free. But we will not stop there. We got another one. This node will provide us with plus 1 to maximum fire resistance for each 40 uncapped fire resistance. What's uncapped fire resistance is? Basically, it's this number. So for each 40 uncapped fire resistance, we will get plus 1 to all elemental resistances. Now let's talk about physical damage reduction. Basically, we have several layers of protection right here, and the main one is shield block. So we're taking this node, this one over here, and these nodes to maximize our block chance. The second layer of protection is armor itself, so we're trying to get as much armor as we possibly can from any sources. The third layer is stun threshold. You might think that it's not that important, but believe me, this node will change everything, and I highly recommend to use it. Finally, we have unique ascendancy node that will grant us 25% of physical damage reduction from converting this damage into fire. Now let's talk about offenses, and we will start with AoE clusters. So we're taking this one over here, this one, and the one that is below, right here. Also, we're taking Lay Siege, which will grant us additional 1% damage for each chance to block. So basically, each of these block chance nodes actually transforms into the damage ones. We're also taking this cluster with a lot of damage and even more AoE. This one over here is very powerful, and we're taking bleed related clusters like this one over here, and these clusters also affects bleeding damage because here we got magnitude of elements and duration of elements. Everything is very good for our bleeding damage. Unfortunately, we don't have enough points to get these and these bleed nodes, at least right now. Now let's talk about sustainability. This is a very big question because we're using Rage. As you already know, Rage will force us to lose life for each stack of Rage we have. And we're taking these nodes and these rage nodes, and the total number of stacks will be 44. So, how can we fix this problem? We have this node, which will help us with life regeneration, and we're taking these life leech nodes. It's extremely powerful, especially this one, when 20% of life leech is instant, is absolutely mandatory. Just crazy how powerful it is. And of course, we're taking these life leech nodes, because it's like free damage plus life leech, why not? As for the jewels, we're trying to get something similar to this one. Increased damage with maces, increased amount of life leech, magnitude of bleeding, and of course, gain +1 rage on melee hit. I hope you enjoyed this video, so don't forget to subscribe and definitely check this next one.